Okay, so picture this. The world as we know it vanished. No humans, just silent cities and empty streets.
Eerie, right?
Yeah, eerie, right? But amidst all that silence, have you ever wondered what would happen to the lights?
Huh. It's a question that makes you think.
It does. One of our listeners, Alan, wants to know, if humans were to suddenly disappear, how long would it take for the last artificial light to go out?
Oh, that's a good question.
To find the answer, we dug into research, and some of the findings might surprise you.
I bet.
It's not just flipping a switch, it's a whole deep dive into power sources and how they'd fare without us.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
Right, okay, so first things first, the power grid. Most of our lights depend on this massive network, but without people to keep it humming, things would go dark pretty fast, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Fossil fuel plants need a constant supply of fuel.
Yeah.
Not to mention regular maintenance without humans to manage those complex operations. It wouldn't be long before those plants just shut down.
So it's not just running out of fuel, it's the whole system breaking down without human intervention.
Exactly. And the real kicker is the interconnectedness. As some power plants go offline, the others get overloaded, triggering a cascade of failures.
Wow.
Even with all our automated safety features, the whole system would probably collapse within days, maybe even hours in some places.
Oh, wow. So it's like a domino effect, one blackout leading to another until the whole grid goes dark.
Precisely. And it's ironic because nuclear reactors with their long-term fuel reserves would actually shut down pretty quickly, too.
You'd think they'd be the last one standing, right?
You would think so, but their safety protocols are designed to automatically shut them down if there's any kind of malfunction.
Oh.
And without humans to monitor and fix things, those reactors would go offline really fast.
So the lights connected to the grid wouldn't last very long at all, but what about off-grid systems?
Yeah.
Surely some of those would hold out longer.
You're right, there are definitely islands of light that would persist for a while powered by independent sources. Think diesel generators, geothermal plants, even wind turbines. Each has its own limitations, though.
Diesel generators probably wouldn't last long, right? They're completely dependent on fuel reserves.
Exactly. Their lifespan would be however much fuel they have on hand, which could be a few days to a few months at best.
Okay, what about geothermal plants? They seem like they'd be more durable, tapping into the Earth's natural heat. Could they run indefinitely?
They have the potential, but even those systems require regular upkeep. One study we looked at was about a geothermal plant in Iceland
Okay.
that needs oil changes and lubrication every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Seems minor, but without those routine tasks, even these plants would eventually break down.
So even with a constant energy source, those lights wouldn't last forever. What about wind turbines? They seem pretty self-sufficient.
That's where things get interesting. Wind turbines are designed for minimal maintenance, and some could potentially keep spinning for decades.
Really?
In fact, there's a documented case of a turbine in Denmark that operated for 11 years without any human intervention.
11 years, that's incredible. But they wouldn't last forever.
Right? Eventually, wear and tear would take its toll. Gearboxes are a particular weak point, and without regular lubrication and replacement, even the sturdiest turbines would grind to a halt.
Okay, so even the hardiest off-grid systems have their limits. But here's where it gets really intriguing. Some sources could potentially last for years, even decades, without any human help.
Yeah, it's surprising to think about.
It is.
But there are some long-lasting contenders in this world without humans scenario. Hydroelectric dams, for example, could operate for quite a while on autopilot.
So something massive like the Hoover Dam could keep generating power for years, even without us around.
Think about it. Those structures are built with an incredible network of sensors, automated systems, and backup systems. They're designed to withstand all sorts of challenges, and in some ways, the absence of humans might actually reduce the risk of operational errors.
Huh. That's an interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So hydroelectric dams would be powering some lights for a good while. What about batteries? Those would drain pretty quickly, wouldn't they?
Well, not as quickly as you might think. Batteries, even the ones with a long shelf life, do slowly lose their charge through a process called self-discharge. But it's a gradual decline, not a sudden blackout.
It's more of a slow fade than a sudden plunge into darkness.
Precisely, we're talking decades. For most batteries to fully drain, think of it like a very slow-burning candle, eventually flickering out.
Fascinating. So we've got hydroelectric dams, slowly losing power batteries, gradually draining. What else is in the running for this long game of elimination?
Well, the real champion in this scenario is likely solar power.
Solar power, really? That's not what I would have guessed.
It makes sense when you consider how many solar installations, especially those in remote areas, are designed for minimal maintenance and maximum durability.
Oh, right, like those emergency call boxes you see along highways or remote weather stations. Those are often solar-powered and built to withstand the elements.
Exactly. They have to operate reliably without frequent human intervention. So, in a world without humans, those panels, quietly soaking up sunlight, could keep some lights burning for a surprisingly long time.
How long are we talking?
Potentially a century or more, especially in dry climates where dust and debris wouldn't accumulate as quickly. Of course, even the most durable systems will eventually succumb to the elements, but solar power is a strong contender for the longest-lasting light source.
This is blowing my mind. We started with lights blinking out in minutes, and now we're talking about solar-powered systems lasting for generations. But there's a twist, isn't there?
There is the longest-lasting light source might not be what we typically think of as artificial at all. It's a bit of an unexpected contender.
Now I'm really intrigued. What is this mysterious long-lasting light?
Well, have you ever heard of Cherenkov radiation?
Cherenkov radiation, it rings a bell, but I can't quite place it. Refresh my memory.
It's this eerie blue glow emitted by certain radioactive materials, specifically when charged particles travel through a medium like water or glass faster than light can in that same medium.
Okay, that's starting to come back to me. Isn't that what gives nuclear reactor cores their characteristic blue glow?
Precisely. And it's the same phenomenon that might produce the longest-lasting artificial light source in a world without humans.
Wait, are you talking about nuclear waste?
Yes, it sounds strange, but spent nuclear fuel, specifically certain isotopes like cesium-137, can emit this Cherenkov radiation for centuries.
So these radioactive waste products locked away in storage facilities would be glowing in the dark long after everything else has gone dark.
Exactly. The intensity of the glow would gradually fade over time as the isotopes decay, but it would persist for a remarkably long time. Technically, it fits the definition of an artificial light source, albeit a rather unexpected one.
Wow. So the remnants of our nuclear age glowing faintly in the darkness long after our cities have crumbled. That's a haunting thought.
It is, and it really speaks to the enduring legacy of human activity, both in terms of our technological achievements and the potential consequences of our choices even when we're gone. Our impact on the planet will continue to be felt in ways both subtle and profound.
It seems like this Cherenkov radiation is a pretty complex concept.
Yeah.
Maybe we should dig a little deeper into how it actually works.
Absolutely. Let's unpack it a bit more. Imagine a supersonic jet breaking the sound barrier. You hear that deafening sonic boom, right?
Yes, that shock wave created when the jet travels faster than the speed of sound. But how does that relate to nuclear waste glowing?
It's a similar concept, but with light instead of sound. Normally, nothing can travel faster than light in a vacuum.
Right.
But when light passes through a medium like water or glass, it slows down.
Okay, so the speed of light isn't constant in every material.
Exactly. It depends on the properties of the medium. Now, those charged particles emitted by the radioactive material, they can sometimes zip through these mediums faster than light can in that same environment.
So they're like tiny superluminal speedsters breaking the light barrier inside the material.
That's a great way to put it. And just like a supersonic jet creates a shockwave of sound, these speedy particles create a shockwave of light. That's the Cherenkov radiation we see as that eerie blue glow.
So this blue glow is essentially light breaking its own speed limit within the material.
Precisely. It's a fascinating phenomenon, and it's what would make spent nuclear fuel glow for centuries, even in a world without humans. Can you imagine stumbling upon a sealed nuclear waste facility centuries from now with nothing but an eerie blue glow emanating from within?
That's a chilling thought. It really challenges our assumptions about what artificial light even means. We started this deep dive talking about light bulbs and street lamps, and now we're talking about radioactive waste glowing in the dark.
It's a reminder that even in our absence, the world wouldn't simply return to some pristine pre-human state. Our impact, for better or worse, would continue to shape the planet in unexpected ways.
Speaking of impact, this whole conversation about long-lasting lights has got me thinking about those solar panels. A century of illumination sounds optimistic. Wouldn't those panels degrade over time, even in dry climates?
You're right to be skeptical. While a century is theoretically possible, it's definitely on the high end of the estimate. Dust storms, temperature fluctuations, and the gradual degradation of the materials themselves would all take their toll.
So even those seemingly invincible solar panels wouldn't last forever.
No, nothing truly does, but they highlight something crucial: the potential for sustainable technologies to outlive our more conventional and arguably more fragile systems.
It's fascinating to think that something as simple as sunlight could be powering parts of our world long after the more complex systems we rely on have crumbled. And it really makes you wonder about the choices we're making today and what kind of legacy we'll leave behind.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our actions have consequences that ripple through time long after we're gone. The lights we leave on, so to speak, could tell a story about our ingenuity, our choices, and ultimately our impact on the planet.
This is a powerful thought, and it really adds a new dimension to Alan's original question. The last light might not be a symbol of human achievement, but a reminder of our enduring footprint on the world. This whole deep dive has been full of surprises, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and it underscores something I find incredibly important: the value of curiosity and exploring questions that challenge our assumptions. Who would have thought that a question about the last artificial light would lead us to nuclear waste glowing in the dark?
It's amazing what you can discover when you dig beneath the surface, isn't it? But before we wrap up this deep dive, I think there's one more aspect we need to explore. We've talked about the fate of different light sources, but what about the structures that house them? What would happen to all those man-made buildings in a world without humans?
It's a question that takes us from individual lights to the massive scale of human architecture.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how long those skyscrapers and cities would last without us around to take care of them.
I imagine it wouldn't be. Pretty nature has a way of reclaiming what we build, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. Rust, corrosion, water damage, plant growth.
Yeah.
All those things, those are constant forces that we combat through maintenance and repairs. But without humans, those forces would be unstoppable.
So those shiny skyscrapers would get overgrown with vines. Roads would crack and crumble, bridges would rust and collapse. It sounds like something straight out of a movie.
In a way, it would be nature would slowly but surely take back what we've built.
Yeah.
Concrete would crack steel, would rust, wood would rot, and eventually those once impressive structures would just blend back into the landscape.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective.
It really does.
It's not just about decay, though, is it? This process of nature reclaiming our stuff could also be seen as a kind of rebirth.
That's a great point. As buildings crumble and vegetation takes over, new habitats would pop up,
Yeah.
providing opportunities for different species to thrive. Imagine birds nesting in the ruins of skyscrapers, trees growing through cracks in concrete, whole forests reclaiming what were once busy city streets.
This is a strange thought, but kind of beautiful. It shows how resilient nature is and its ability to adapt and transform. Even when things change so much, it makes you wonder what a future archaeologist would think.
It's intriguing to think about, isn't it? How would future generations interpret the leftovers of our civilization?
Yeah.
Would they see our crumbling cities as a warning or as a testament to human ingenuity?
This whole deep dive has been full of thought-provoking questions. I mean, who knew that a simple question about the last artificial light would lead us to explore the fate of our planet and our legacy?
It's a testament to the power of curiosity. Sometimes the simplest questions can lead us to the most unexpected insights.
So as we wrap up this journey into a world without humans, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I hope they come away with a renewed sense of wonder about the world around them.
Yeah.
And maybe a deeper appreciation for how everything is connected, from the smallest organisms to the biggest cosmic events.
That's a great way to put it. And maybe a little bit of humility, too, knowing that we're just a small part of a much bigger story, a story that will keep going whether we're here or not.
Exactly. Our time on this planet is limited, but what we do can affect things for generations.
This has been quite a journey, from the flickering lights of a dying power grid to the glow of nuclear waste, and finally to the slow return of nature. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, and it all started with Alan's question: how long until the last artificial light goes out?
And we found out that the answer is way more complicated than we thought. It's a story of systems and consequences and the power of nature.
Okay.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay.
We've looked at what might happen to the physical world. But what about the things we can't touch? What about stories, ideas, art, music, the heart of human culture? What would happen to those things in a world without us?
That's a deep question, and one that I think we'll leave for our listeners to think about. Maybe it's in those things, the echoes of our creativity, that the most lasting parts of humanity will be found.
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this trip into a world without humans. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.